Hello, everyone. Welcome to Authority Architects. Today we have Larry Thrailkill, who has had an incredible career spanning legal, sports, university leadership, and much, much more. Thanks so much for joining, Larry.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
So, Larry, I know we've met a few times before this podcast, and I just cherish the opportunity to just hear your wisdom from just so many different career paths and things that you've done over the course of your professional career. Can you just give us a little bit of background to yourself, kind of the various areas that you've had experience in, and what you're up to today?
Well, I became a practicing lawyer um, back in the 70s and served as a JAG officer in the Air Force during the Vietnam era, and then uh, practiced law in Nashville. And that's been my primary location and the primary thing that has involved all the other things that I've been involved with was the practice of law. Uh, in the 80s, I got involved with Belmont University here and served there. I've been on their board for over 40 years now, and I have served as chairman for 13 years between 92 and 2005. And then I had the opportunity, because of my legal practice, to represent the DeWardelo family, who is the owners of shopping malls and lots of real estate, and also the San Francisco 49ers. And the law profession led me into that, and I ended up being the president of the 49ers for a season back in the 90s. Um, so the law has sort of been the connecting factor of all the various things I've been involved in. But the walk has been pretty interesting and not what I expected at all when I started.
Well, it's funny because I feel like a lot of people that we interview on this show say that. They say I ended up in a place where I totally didn't expect, but I'm really grateful for the journey. So I want to start with your time at Belmont. I know that when we talked a few months ago, you told me the story of how you even got on the board in the first place, because you don't have any connection to the university you didn't have before that, right?
That's correct. I was born and raised in Georgia, and so I went to the university there and went to Vanderbilt Law School. That's what brought us to Nashville. But I had no connection with Belmont. In fact, wasn't even sure exactly much about the school. Uh, I happened to have some vacant office space in my offices, uh, and I had a friend in the entertainment law business who needed a place to occupy with he and his secretary. So I invited them to come and join, have some space there. Walked into his office one night. He was a part-time music minister at a Baptist church here in Nashville. He had his desk cluttered with a bunch of token gift kinds of things. And I asked him, I said, Randy, what are you doing? He said, I'm taking a trip to Japan and I have to have something to present to the people we meet over there. And so I offered to give him some money to help with that effort. And within about a week, I hear from the president of Belmont University, who I didn't realize was the father-in-law of Randy, who was the guy occupying the space in my office. And so Dr. Gabhart came and figured out he had a Baptist who would write a check for something and asked me for money. And I ended up going on the board of Belmont shortly thereafter, because they had hired the youngest president in the United States colleges at the time. He was 32 years old and he became college president, and all of the board members were senior people like Dr. Gabhart, the president, and so he wanted somebody younger who could relate to his new president. And so I was that person who was supposed to bring a different generation to the table there.
So, can you tell a little bit about kind of what's occurred at during your time at Belmont? I know that from like the sports standpoint, that you've helped put them on the map in a large way, and just some of the other work that's gone on during your tenure there. I know it's been a while, but some of the highlights.
When I went on the board, Belmont was what I would call a commuter college. We had 300 beds on campus for students and a student population of less than 1,500. The goal was, the vision was to create a Christian university that was excellent in all the pursuits that it undertook. And at that time, it was basically music, music business, and the business school, training accountants, and then other business things. We had a strong emphasis at the early days on entrepreneurship, which has continued to this day. And so what we undertook was, how do we expand an urban campus, which was sort of landlocked a little bit at the time? How do we use our urban location to our advantage? How do we brand with Nashville? And as most people know, Nashville has had quite a upcoming in the last 30 years or so. And so we set about to make it a more residential campus to create student life. At the time, we were NAIA school in sports, and thought in the 90s that it would be wise to go to Division One. We didn't know exactly what that meant at the time, but we wanted to see our name on ESPN just like we saw everybody else's name on there. And we thought it would be a good draw for students and a different kind of experience for our students on campus. So that was the vision. We made a commitment to go Division One, and our athletic programs. We do not have football, and that's a blessing, and it's getting to be a bigger blessing as the days go on here. But we've done quite well and been in the NCAA tournament a number of times. In addition, over that time, we started thinking about, what does Nashville, Middle Tennessee, Southeastern United States, what do they lack? What other things are missing here? So we went into occupational therapy and physical therapy. We had a great nursing program. Nashville is sort of a healthcare center here with HCA and Ascension and others being present. So we decided, how do we use that as an advantage for the school? So over these years, we developed a law school. We developed a medical school, which is about 3 or 4 years old now. We went into architecture, and there hadn't been an architecture school started in years. And so we looked for those niches where we could bring excellence to it on a Christian campus and try to take advantage of those areas. And now we have about 9,000 students and a beautiful campus with many, many dorms. I'm going to an opening tomorrow for a new residence hall on the campus. So it's been quite an adventure. The Curb Center, I guess, was the biggest piece that we put together, which is our arena for sports. And that was a huge addition to the campus for not only performance but also for the sports. And we also then we're in Music City, so we wanted to develop some things that were attractive to the music industry here. So we have perhaps the finest symphony hall on a campus in the United States that we were able to build, the Fisher Center, in fact, Dolly Parton chose it as the place to premiere what will soon be a Broadway show called Dolly, that is going on right now on the campus as they prepare to go to Broadway. And so I'm going to see that one day next week. But I think the deal was, Stephen, that we were looking for, how can we use our location? How can we use the needs? How can we assess what the population needs and address those issues rather than trying to grow a new English department, because everybody's got one of those and everybody's got a history department and those kind of things. And so what could we bring to the table that was unique in that it was Christian, unique in that it was excellent, but took advantage of our setting here in Nashville, and we've been very blessed in that enterprise over the years.
And you mentioned dorms and buildings. I read somewhere that there's a dorm, or there's a building on Belmont's campus that's named after you. Is that right?
I'm afraid that's correct.
That's
It was a
wild.
big surprise for Jan and I. We they were having a groundbreaking on a new residence hall that we had voted for on the board. I was chairing the board at the time, and they said, we're gonna have this groundbreaking, and you need to be there to introduce some people and to welcome people and do that thing as chairman. And I was at my office, and I didn't know anything about a naming situation, and so my wife knew, everybody in my office knew, but I didn't know. And so I was very busy that morning, and everybody in the office kept saying, you need to get out of here. you need to get out of here and go. And so I finally got out of there and went and was surprised and honored that they had named a residence hall in our name.
Wow, that's wild. Well, another thing I wanted to ask about Larry is, and you alluded to this in one of my earlier answers to my earlier questions about kind of your legal career being the through line, but that led you to uh, just some dealings and leadership related to the NFL and the 49ers. Can you tell that how that came to be, and kind of what your role was? And then we'd love to kind of unpack some of your wisdom on leadership and kind of how to take advantage of being in the room when you have the opportunity, I think is really what we're curious about.
The DeBartolo and 49er thing came again totally was totally unexpected. Uh, I was with a larger law firm at the time, and Mr. Ed DeBartolo was the owner of the 49ers. Purchased them back in the late 70s. Uh, the team was basically operated by his son Eddie, who was very much involved in the and was sort of the face of the organization there. Uh, but there's a daughter involved. Mr. DeBartolo had a daughter, and I ended up. Her husband was a pathologist trained at Vanderbilt University, another Nashville connection. He had bought some pathology clinics, wanted to sell them, and he asked one of my partners who we had at our firm who might be qualified to help him sell it to a public company. And he hired me to do that sale. I did the sale, ended up following that, doing some personal work for he and his wife. Uh, uh, that led to doing some work in connection with her father, Mr. DeBartolo's estate. And then after that, the Mr. DeBartolo died in 1994. He was very ill. He died around Thanksgiving in 1994. The company, their real estate empire, the 49ers were doing well, but they had a number of those trophies that everybody likes. But the real estate empire had not done as well. The mall business that they were in had not done as well. And so they hired me to come to Youngstown, Ohio, and lead a reorganization and a workout to pay off debt and get rid of some unnecessary properties and do that sort of thing. So I first went to Youngstown as the chief operating officer of the DeBartolo companies, and my contract was one page, and it said you can do anything you need to do to reorganize the company except you can't touch the 49ers. And that was off limits. They wanted to preserve that asset. And so we worked up there for about 4 years doing that. And during those 4 years, unfortunately, Eddie got involved in some legal issues down in Louisiana, and the NFL would not allow him to be the representative of the team and participate in league meetings. So, beginning about 1996, I started being the representative of the team to the league and dealing with an attempt at that time to build a new stadium in San Francisco. This is before the Levi Stadium, which they have today. We were looking at improving on Candlestick, which was not a very good venue for the team, and so they hired me to be the league representative. But then in 1998, Carmen Policy, who had been the longtime president of the 49ers, decided that he wanted to go with Al Lerner and attempt to get the new Cleveland franchise. The Browns franchise was being reissued by the league, and they'd been moved to the Modells had moved them up to Baltimore, and they wanted to have a new franchise there. And so he announced, and he came to my office and announced that he was leaving, and he was going to have a press conference the following day to announce that he was going with Lerner. And I went to the DeBartolo children, Eddie and Denise, and said, "You can't let this be a big announcement about the Cleveland Browns. This needs to be a big announcement about the San Francisco 49ers." And so they went into an office. I thought I'd just about finished my job there. And they came out and said, "We've got a new president." And I said, "Who is it?" And they said, "It's you. Get on a plane and go to San Francisco. There'll be a live press conference on ESPN in the morning. You're the new president of the 49ers. So I got on the plane and went to San Francisco and had the live press conference, and one of those learned sports writers asked what my qualifications were to be the president of the 49ers. And I told him I was a mediocre quarterback on a terrible high school football team. And but here I was. I was the president of the 49ers. And so,
Well, that's why. Well, and I remember Michael and I are both Philly guys, and I remember you were saying, Larry, that that was kind of the early days of Jeff Lurie's tenure as owner, and you were saying that you shared a box seats with him at one point, and man, you're in all these high stakes.
at the Super Bowl, the league would pair up teams for boxes. That if you were not in the Super Bowl, they would pair up teams for boxes. And Mr. Lurie and I shared a box there. He was one of the very kind owners, as you say. He was a relatively new owner in the league at the time, but he was extremely kind. When I'd show up for league meetings, of course, most everybody else who was there, except for Green Bay, the owner was there. And here I was, and I wasn't an owner. I wasn't close to being an owner. I was just a hired helper. And but he was very kind to me. The Rooneys were very gracious to me, and that was I enjoyed that time getting to meet those people that you don't get to meet very often.
Wow, that's wild. Well, I'm curious, Larry. I mean, all these all these kind of different environments, getting on the board at Belmont, this 49ers situation, it seems like you really took advantage of the opportunities that were presented to you. What advice do you have for folks to kind of make the most of those opportunities?
Well, it's amazing how the Lord opens up doors that you never expect. What I have always told people who ask about that, Stephen, is the first thing is be prepared for an opportunity. And when I say that, I mean do what you're doing now excellently, do it the very best, and use every opportunity in your current job to gain insight, to gain information from others, to talk to leaders in your environment there, to talk to others who are successful in your area, and then you're prepared when a door opens and you can accept it. The second thing is to be careful because not every door that opens is the right one. And so sometimes I find people who get anxious to get in. I was lucky in I had some experience with Belmont, which really helped later on in my work with the 49ers because I think you grow and mature in how to lead and how to work with people. But being prepared, making sure you're making the right decision, and it's based, for me, it's always based on who are the people who are inviting me in the door. I used to tell my clients, you can't make a good deal with bad people. And so look for the character of the people that you're going to be involved with and make sure of that. Then take advantage of the opportunity and step in. Humility plays a big role here. You take into a new position. You can't come in as a know-it-all. You can't come in as somebody, because everybody there knows more about the existing situation than you do. But come in humble, come in always curious, always asking questions, but being ready to make tough decisions, because most of those new opportunities, you are getting those because there's the need for leadership and there's a need for somebody to make some decisions that perhaps somebody didn't want to make before. And so you have to be ready to make those tough decisions.
Larry, in terms of leadership, it sounds like you've had just such a wide range of leadership roles. What would you say are some of the largest pieces of advice that you'd have for people surrounding leadership?
Well, I think, we talk about leadership a lot. Um, Leadership evolves when you have people who are willing to follow you. We often think of leadership as because I got a position or I got a title. And leadership really involves what you can do to encourage or to get people to be willing to follow you. And so I found out the thing you do is you understand what you don't understand so that you take advantage of the resources and the knowledge of those around you. The second thing is I read a book a long, long time ago called Leadership Secrets of Attila the Hun, which was a very incisive book, was very brief, which was just perfect for me. Uh, and he had a couple of sayings in there, the writer did, that were extremely helpful. Uh, Things like, you know, make sure the Huns are getting exactly the same treatment that you're getting. If you're Attila, you want to make sure the people that are following you are getting the same kind and quality of treatment that you're getting as the leader. And then he would say, if you have followers that are loyal, be very careful with them. Give them time and patience and work with them. If you find someone who's a disloyal Hun, get rid of them immediately. It's like a cancer. Those are the tough kinds of decisions you have to make. But the main thing I learned was you surround yourself with the right kind of people. You surround yourself with the right kind of people, and people who love other people, who take care of other people, who are not selfish, who are not greedy, who think about themselves, and you find people who are honest. The biggest thing I found that people didn't have was honesty, and by that I don't mean they were corrupt in some sense of going out and running an illegal scheme. I mean, they would not ask themselves honest questions, and then they would not ask honest questions of others and accept honest answers from others. And that, to me, really is foundational for a leader. You've got to be able, people have to know that you're going to ask the tough questions and that they can ask you questions and they're going to get an honest response. Uh, and they also have to know that I'm looking at myself honestly. I'm not looking at myself as different from them. I'm examining myself the same way I'm examining them. Uh, and so that's what I always try to do as a leader, is understand the people that we're following and try and be receptive to what they had to say and listen to what they had to say. I might choose not to follow it, but I always wanted to listen to it.
Larry, I'm curious to follow up on that. The leadership positions that you've had in kind of various industries, if you will, would you say that that process is the same, or are there like key differences in sports versus legal versus?
Where the principles are almost always the same. The biggest difference I found between Belmont, for example, and the 49ers, or serving as a chair of another board, I've served as chairs of other boards of businesses, um, is with Belmont, you're dealing with a lot of volunteers. All your board members are volunteers. They are unpaid generally at that kind of institution. They're unpaid volunteers. A lot of the people who support the institution do so because of their love for the institution or volunteers. On the other hand, you get to the 49ers or you get to some other business, most of the time you're dealing with mostly employees. You're dealing mostly with people who are being paid. And so you treat those two groups the same basic of treating them well, but you have to address them differently because you're making different demands on a volunteer than you would on somebody who's an employee, and you have to understand that. Now, otherwise, they're pretty much the same. Everybody has prima donnas, whether it's in sports or whether it's in corporate America. I've got the chief salesman, my best salesman, who's a prima donna, and how do I handle that person? Or my quarterback. I was lucky I did not have a quarterback who's a prima donna when I was with the 49ers. I have heard of situations where that's been the case, though. But you're dealing with the same kind of people at all. The thing I like best is, and I think people would say this either at the 49ers or at Belmont, the janitorial staff thought that I cared as much about them as I cared about Jerry Rice and Steve Young. I addressed them the same way. I wanted to be good to them the same way. Now they didn't get paid the same thing, but they want to know that I respected them and that I treated them the same way that I treated somebody else. And the same way at Belmont. Some of my best friends over the years were the guys who were working and doing jobs that were not those high end jobs, but they were extremely important for the university. So I think those kinds of things you find it's mostly the same. There are some differences between volunteers and paid help, but otherwise it's almost always the same.
Yeah. Well, those are all the prepared questions I have, Larry. Are there any other kind of last bits of advice or kind of lasting thoughts that you want to share before we adjourn here?
Well, I would say, Steve, the other thing that I think is critical for people who are going to take on big jobs is make sure you have the right vision for the job. Make sure you have the right goal. You know, one of the things at Belmont, the 49ers was really easy. What's your goal? What's your vision? It's to hold up that trophy, you know, the end of January, the 1st of February, you want to hold up that trophy. And so we had a 49er way about doing things. And that got to be almost a joke in the building. We're going to do things the 49ers way, which was excellent, on time, everybody's doing their job. And we had great leaders like Jerry and Steve Young and all who would insist in the locker room that we did it the 49ers way. And if you found people who didn't want to do it the 49ers way, we got rid of them. You know, we didn't want them to be there. At Belmont, we had a Belmont way of doing things, and we had a big vision. You know, we want to be the best Christian university in the world. And so if you take on big visions, it's much easier to get people excited about a big vision than it is about a little vision. Same thing with brands. You know, we want to be the best brand of soft drink or potato chips or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we can definitely agree with that. I mean, that those are the types of conversations we're having with our clients all the time, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Well, thank you so much for joining, Larry. This was really a treat, and really appreciate your time today.
My pleasure. Glad to do it, Michael. Good to see you.